Well, first of all, I want to thank you for submitting your questions and comments to the virtual comment box. I really appreciate it, and it just helps us out to understand, where you're at as a master gardener. Before we begin, we want to thank you for your patience over the last several years. Wisconsin Extension has undergone major changes, and the ripple effects continue through our programs. We know you feel this, and we very much appreciate you sticking with us as we move forward. We're excited about our new framework that we previously shared with you back in the email a few weeks ago. It provides, and I'm quoting right out of the email here, increased ability to volunteer where you want, more flexibility and reduced burden in the Master Gardener program requirements, and associations can operate independently. And understandingly, you have lots of questions about it. Thank you for submitting your questions and comments. We reviewed everything that was submitted and grouped on-topic questions into themes, and we'll address these to the best of our ability. So we've kind of arranged these in a logical order. So some of the answers to earlier questions kind of build upon and set the stage for later questions. So that's sort of how we've gone about organizing these questions. So I'm joined here with Mike. Hi, Mike.
Hello.
Mike Maddox, he's the Master Gardener Outreach Program Manager. And for those who don't know me, my name is Jay, and I am the Horticulture Program Outreach Program Manager. So Mike, we got some questions here. You ready to get going?
Let's do this.
All right. So Mike, there's been many questions and concerns reflected on local state staffing of extension positions. Mm-hmm. So, Mike and I, well, actually, that's maybe more of a comment than a question. Mike and I feel that it's best to start with sharing our new staffing plan, which really didn't come up in the questions, to set the stage for the questions that follow. Understanding our staffing plan will help you understand why we're moving in the direction we are going. So, you want to jump in there, Mike?
Yeah, and throughout this, I'm going to be doing things like the way they were versus the way they're going to be.
Right.
So you're going to be hearing me doing that a lot. So the way things were was our program implementation. The way we did things was based on the concept of an extension educator in each and every county. And for our program, this person would provide the guidance, the support, and the supervision required for everything Master Gardeners would do. We also used a 4-H model in projects and assumed everything a Master Gardener did was on behalf of Extension and with staff guidance and support. The program was limited to the presence of staff and the Extension office, and in many places we struggled with staffing to support the program. So where we're going to is our future staffing model is based on regional or statewide extension educator positions. So we're moving away from the county model. Because of that, we can't guarantee local educators will be present to lead the local program the way the old model required them to do so. And when local educators are present, they must be able to focus on educational content. Now, by acknowledging we are not 4-H, we are adopting a model that can now let folks join the Master Gardener program statewide, regardless of staffing levels in any given county. And this will also give you more flexibility in where you can volunteer, because we don't need that staff oversight the way we once did. Now, there's also going to be some additional changes at the state level, like between Jay and myself. We nested the Master Gardener program into the newly created Extension Horticulture program, and we're continuing an evolution with that.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Mike. And just one little point of clarity for folks too. So when we're talking, this discussion today is about the horticulture program and the Master Gardener program. So some of the things we say may not apply to 4-H, and when we talk about moving away from a county, just be aware that we're not talking about extension wide. We're talking about how it applies to the horticulture and Master Gardener programs.
Good point.
Just want to make that clear.
Yeah.
All right. So there are many questions related to volunteer projects. I think we had over 100 questions in total. Isn't that right, Mike? It's quite a bit.
It's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot. There's an appreciation for more flexibility on this, but as one person put it, there's a concern of us turning into the wild, wild west. And so hopefully we can ask people to keep their revolvers in their holsters, and we won't become the wild, wild west. So do you want to comment on that, Mike?
Sure. Again, let's start with the way it has been. So
Okay.
Project approval was done locally in the county. Approval was determined by an educator, or a process was used by the association. Criteria for approval varied between counties, but in general, everyone agreed that the project had to be for public good, such as with a not-for-profit organization or municipality. Other examples, but again, generally not-for-profit type group. Also, it had to be gardening related. Now, one big reason for this approval process was Extension's attempt to provide risk management, liability, and to support all volunteers, no matter where they were putting in their community service. So going forward, we are not proposing the Wild Wild West. We do propose a new structure though. So for hours to count for volunteer service for the program, 2 criteria will need to be met. The first one, you will be volunteering for another organization. The organization you are volunteering for must have a public good. Again, a nonprofit, municipal, government, non-political group, and be able to, and that organization needs to be able to support volunteers. While at that organization, master gardeners must follow the requirements of that organization they choose to volunteer for. And this may include the criminal background check. This may include mandated reporter training. It may include a volunteer agreement. That's up to those organizations to determine. Extension will not extend our liability to all volunteer activities as we previously did. The second criteria, the activity being conducted for the organization needs to be within the scope of the Master Gardener program. It needs to still be connected to horticulture and gardening. And this will give us statewide uniformity. Now, more information on the scope and the purpose will be further detailed in an update to our onboarding course, and we will communicate that to you when it is ready.
Thank you, Mike. So you mentioned volunteering for another organization, but the question, it might be prompting the question, will there be opportunities to keep volunteering with Extension?
Yeah. So in this new model, we, Extension, will be one of the organizations you choose to volunteer for. And with this, we will be creating a very distinct volunteer opportunity in which Extension staff provides the guidance and supervision. And if you choose to participate in these extension activities, we will require that criminal background check, the mandated reporter training, and the other conditions of service that we've traditionally had in the program. This will be a new concept for a volunteer opportunity, and more information will be provided when these volunteer opportunities become available.
All right, thanks, Mike. There were also a lot of questions about what is changing for requirements for certification and hours for volunteering and continuing education. So, question would be, how is someone a certified master gardener?
Good question. So master gardeners in our previous system were certified for a year when they reported that minimum of 24 hours of volunteer service and a minimum of 10 hours of continuing education by our December 31st deadline. And they put that into the online reporting system. In that model, we depended on the honor system in what people reported. Now, in our new system, master gardeners continue to become certified when they report a minimum of 24 hours of volunteer work and a minimum of 10 hours continuing education by December 31st into the online reporting system. So you're still certified when you report that 24 and 10 into the system by the deadline. And going forward, we will continue to depend on the honor system in what people will report.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. Well, and that prompts another question, and we've seen this in the question box too. What if someone reports less than that? So they report less than the 24 hours of volunteer and less than 10 hours of continuing ed.
So previously, or in my old system, we struggled with when people reported less. And we heard the need to increase program flexibility with those hours reporting. So we introduced an exempt status to allow someone to continue connected with the program for a 1-year period of time. To do this, people had to fill out paperwork and submit it locally to accommodate this temporary status. Prior to that, the alternative option was for the volunteer to be removed from the program. Now, going forward, we are still developing specifics to kind of operationalize this exempt status for individuals that may report less than the 24 and 10 minimum. But we still want them to report at least 1 hour in both community service and continuing education. This will be a new status designation, and we will have more details on this later. But again, we're still going to continue to depend on the honor system in what people report.
Okay. Yeah. So at least 1 hour in both. So then when is someone removed from the program then?
Yep. Previously, individuals were removed from the Master Gardener program when they failed to self-report that 24 and 10 in hours, and they failed to submit that exemption form. If they failed to enroll by the deadline, or if they demonstrated behaviors that were inconsistent with the conditions of service and the volunteer agreements, they were removed from the program. Now, going forward, we are still developing specifics regarding that non-participation in the program. So when will somebody removed? We're still working on, but we still know individuals will be reprimanded or removed from the program if they demonstrate behaviors that are inconsistent with the program purpose, scope, or our new code of ethics. But we are working on the hour threshold to determine inactivity. But we really want it to be fair. We really want to be flexible, and we still need it to accommodate life that people encounter.
Right. Yeah. How about those Master Gardeners who have been with us a long time? Will they have emeritus status, or will the whole emeritus status designation change?
Right. So for us, we called it honored status, not emeritus, but honored.
Right.
But honored status was developed recently to recognize those long-serving members who've made significant accomplishments. Honored status would allow selected recipients to stay connected to the Master Gardener program, and those individuals would have no annual requirements. But in our old system, they would still be required to complete the criminal background check and our other mandates that were required. Going forward, honored status continues in the new model, and the criminal background check and mandates will no longer be required by extension for the people who will opt for the status recognition. Now, I suspect there may be additional updates to the status pending a new recognition system.
Got it. So while talking about recognition, will there be, well, I kind of hinted at it, will there be changes to recognition in the program?
Yeah, we have had a long-standing recognition system to honor people who have achieved certain volunteer hour milestones, 100 hours, 250, 500, 1,000. And we've actually had a lot of input that this needed to be updated and modernized. So we're looking into this. And what we want to do is, as we go forward, we want to explore a new recognition system, and it will likely be tied to someone's status level. So I'll give you one example, one potential example on what this could be. So let's say an individual who wants to go for honored status, we would be looking for individuals who have 10 or more years of certified status that will be eligible for honored status. And we really want to tie that certification, that title of certification, that status of certification to the awards and recognition. But this has a lot of opportunity for growth. I think this is a really good thing for us to do in the near future, but it's on our to-do list. And I think it's an opportunity to also add some other incentives and motivation for folks who not only achieve the 2410, but who go above and beyond it.
Right. Well, and that's a good example. And just to be clear, that example of the 10-year, like we just said, that's just an example. That's not actually something that's been decided yet, right?
I think it's the easiest example for
Yeah.
where we're at right now. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've seen some work done with some of our colleagues, one of our county-based colleagues who's done some really good thinking on that. So there's more to come on that, it seems.
Yes, there will be.
Okay, great. We also had a lot of questions about the criminal background checks and other mandates, like the mandated reporter training. Can you talk about those changes?
Sure can. So in the way it has been, Extension attempted to provide liability for everything a Master Gardener was doing. And because of this, we then had these other mandates that were included. So going forward, Extension will provide liability only to individuals who are participating in a defined extension volunteer activity. For that, we will require the criminal background check and the other mandates for extension volunteer activities. Again, more on that to come. For all other things, master gardeners must follow the requirements of the organization they choose to volunteer for. You're going to hear me say that a lot, but it's going to be,
Okay.
what does that local organization want, and will you follow that?
Okay. Yeah, I think some of the other questions that come in, you're going to get a chance to maybe get in a bit more detail of some examples. That's great. Another one here. There have been a lot of sticky questions on the CBC.
Yep.
That's criminal background check. Will the criminal, let me see if I can say that. Will criminal background checks be required?
Now, previously, because of the way we viewed the program, passing a criminal background check was a contingency to being a master gardener volunteer, regardless of where or with whom you chose to volunteer with. Going forward, master gardeners must follow the requirements of the organizations they choose to volunteer for. And this may include doing a criminal background check for them. So for example, for them, yeah. So for example, if you're volunteering at a botanical garden, they may or may not require a criminal background check to be there. A school, however, may require you to do that criminal background check if you want to volunteer for them. It is best left up to the organizations to decide how to create safe environments for their clients, staff, and volunteers. And again, if someone chooses to volunteer for one of our new extension volunteer opportunities, we will require a criminal background check.
All right. So for those folks, nothing will change. For folks who volunteer with extension, it's kind of same old, same old.
Same old, same old.
All right. Okay. Thanks. Will there be other program requirements?
Yeah. So traditionally, we've had behavior agreements, assumptions of risk, and other conditions of services that had to be signed off on prior, in order to be a master gardener in our program. Going forward, we're going to bundle a lot of that together to a code of ethics that will be a contingency for everyone to be a master gardener. In addition, master gardeners must follow the requirements of the organizations they choose to volunteer for. And this may include those additional behavior agreements, assumption of risk, and anything else that they require. So again, let's go back to that botanical garden. If you volunteer them, you may be required to sign their volunteer agreements, their behavior expectations, or maybe they don't require it. It's up to them. It's up to that organization. And to reiterate, it's the same old if you're deciding to volunteer for one of these new extension opportunities. You're going to need us to do our conditions of service and all that if you choose to volunteer with us.
Okay, we've had another question come in. It's do master gardeners complete annual enrollment?
In the past, the extension required annual enrollment of all volunteers to determine who is active each year. And this was per our risk management and liability process. So we were required to do that to know who was representing us. Going forward, there is no enrollment process as there has been in the past. Instead, you just must report your hours by December 31st deadline into our online reporting system. And you'll need to do that to be eligible for any program recognitions, awards, or status updates. So, and as mentioned, we are still developing the details as to when someone is determined to be a non-participant in the program. When will they be out of the program? Still working on that. We will, as necessary, post updates to our terms and conditions about the program, including the code of ethics, for you to read and agree to. And this most likely will be done through our online reporting system, but we may do it other ways if need be.
Okay, great. Thank you. I guess it's probably self-evident, but most master gardeners obviously love doing stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
There've been a number of questions pertaining to what counts as a master gardener. So what does count, Mike?
Sure. Previously, master gardeners engaged in a wide variety of horticulture content through gardening, educating others, and their own continuing education. Fundraising activities and leadership positions were included in what counts. What counts has traditionally been determined at that local level and could vary from county to county. Going forward, master gardeners continue to engage in a wide variety of horticulture content through gardening, educating others, and their own continuing education. Fundraisers and leadership positions are included when it supports horticulture activities and education. And we are outlining what counts for horticulture subject matter, community service, and continuing education, so there is consistency across the state. So at the beginning of the year, we will be communicating these updates to all master gardeners.
So some of those things are still being worked out then.
Still being worked out, but before it was, it was educating others in gardening and horticulture. In the future, it's still going to be gardening and educating others in horticulture, but we're painting some clear, bright new lines so that everybody is operating from the same policy guidance across the state, rather than it being a county by county by county basis.
Right. Okay. Thanks. So another question that does pop up from time to time: will travel count? So if I'm driving in my car, does that count?
Yeah, travel time and paid time for an organization did not count. And going forward, travel time and paid time for an organization will continue not to count.
Okay. Yeah, that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. The way people have become master gardeners and received training has already been changing over the years. Going forward, how does someone become a master gardener?
So one of the things we've been trying to do beforehand was to make training consistent across the state, because it was being done in many different ways. And even in the last couple of years, for example, Extension provided training through the local county office, and that was limited to only certain areas of the state. In some places, it was coordinated by an educator. In other counties, training was facilitated by master gardeners with staff oversight. Everyone doing training, they may have used the state provided resources, or they use their own materials. And in that model, training was usually limited to only individuals wanting to be master gardeners. So we weren't able to serve everybody who wanted content. And we also tended to use that classroom as both a place for learning horticulture and to cram in an orientation to the Master Gardener program. So to bring consistency, we separated horticulture from the introduction to the program. So we created onboarding, and that was a way to standardize the orientation to the Master Gardener program. And the horticulture prerequisite is obtained through the Foundations in Horticulture training or through classes with local extension educators. So we separated the two, we created an online program, and we still have educators providing that local in-person class in some places where there's educators. Now, going forward, in the future, the same pathways will continue with someone completing the horticulture prerequisite by either Foundations in Horticulture or through a local class, and then they will register for onboarding. Now, we also know, and this is a little bit of an aside, that due to significant updates to the program and this will be worked into our onboarding course, it will also be a requirement of existing master gardeners to complete the 2022 onboarding course. We will offer this at no cost to people who are currently members, and they'll get access to this in our Canvas classroom, and it will count as continuing education for those who take it.
Oh, good. So we'll get some hours that way for continuing ed. Another question here. There was lots of questions related to how master gardeners represent themselves. So I've got a few questions here. Maybe I can just ask you a question. You can comment, and we'll just kind of go through this list here. So so the first one here is, when can master gardeners use the logo?
Yep. So previously there was no policy and very limited guidance on how the logos could be used. Going forward, that would be very different. So let's start with this. If a logo is required, ask the organization you are volunteering with if their logo is appropriate and available to use, and use that one. And in some cases, this may include your association's logo. And this applies to the UW-Madison logo as well. So let me say this next part. The official UW-Madison logo, the one with the W on the red shield, is limited to only UW-Madison Division of Extension approved products, programs, and activities. You just can't put that on anything. Only extension staff can determine when it is to be used. Now, as for the Master Gardener program, the one with the green leaves, we ask that you stop using it. It's no longer the official logo of the Master Gardener program because we've merged with UW-Madison.
Okay. So certainly with the UW-Madison crest, that's definitely something Master Gardeners, if they think they want to use, or I think they really got to run that by a staff member.
It's highly regulated, and as
Yeah.
coming in to use it, so don't use it.
Yeah. Okay. How do Master Gardeners represent themselves in the community?
Right. So in our old model, we viewed everything a Master Gardener did on behalf of Extension, and many times they would be introducing themselves as such. In the new model, Master Gardeners would identify themselves as someone credentialed by the Extension Master Gardener program, and you're volunteering on behalf of a specific organization. So yeah, I'm a Master Gardener volunteering with my grandchild's school, or I'm a Master Gardener volunteering for the area botanical gardens. So we're a credential for you, but you're volunteering on behalf of somebody else.
So credentialed. So just kind of go a little farther what you were saying. So it'd be like, I could say, hi, I'm Jay, and I am not really, but we're going to pretend here for a second. Hi, I'm Jay, and I am a Master Gardener credentialed through UW-Madison, and I am volunteering at my kid's school garden. Like that would be an accurate statement.
Yeah, and we'll probably roll off the tongue as we practice it more, a little easier.
Sure.
I'm a certified master, I'm a certified Extension Master Gardener, and I'm volunteering for this library.
Okay.
Insert your whomever you're volunteering for that. No, so still being able to say a certified Master Gardener is going to be an appropriate thing.
So they might not be our volunteer, but we're the credential is certified through us.
Yeah, they're still a participant in our program.
Got it. Okay. When can someone wear their Master Gardener name badge?
I've always had a lot of this question, and there has never been a statewide policy or guidance on the use of name badges. I don't think there's going to be much better going into the future. So folks can wear their name badge whenever they want to signify that they are a credentialed Master Gardener, credentialed by UW Extension and in the program. And at this point in time, I still anticipate you can wear it whenever you want to, when you want to represent yourself as being part of the Extension Master Gardener program.
Okay, thank you. We also saw some questions about access to resources. Do the changes limit Master Gardener access to resources? So I have a few here. Maybe I'll just read them off and then you can just comment. So first one here is, will Master Gardeners still have access to Extension online resources?
Yes, Master Gardeners continue to have access to our websites, to our Canvas Classroom, to Plant Doc, to our monthly volunteer vibe. They will still have access to that.
Okay. Will Master Gardeners have access to Extension staff, statewide and local?
Yep, a lot of this is going to be contingent on staffing levels, but overall, Master Gardeners continue to have access to your local staff and statewide staff, depending on their role and the staffing level. Please keep in mind, though, that as we're continuing through this change, your educator's role may be changing, as well as those of us at the state level.
Right. So even counties that have, let's say, a livestock educator, that relationship between the livestock educator and the Master Gardener program may change.
That professional relationship, yes.
Okay. Will Master Gardeners still have access to the county office where applicable?
Yep. So before, you had to follow local policies regarding using county office facilities. Everybody has rules for using them. Master Gardeners may continue to follow local policies regarding access to county offices. And I mean, this is a difficult one to answer just because everybody's different.
Sure.
You still have to follow the local policy. I think probably the big one is for associations, the access to the local office may change due to associations now being recognized as separate entities from Extension.
Okay. And actually, this kind of segues nice into the next batch of questions. There were many questions that came in regarding associations. And we'll be passing a lot of those to WIMGA, and they'll have to address those because those are really WIMGA type questions. So just be aware that we won't be talking too much about WIMGA stuff today. Associations have long provided important services to the program. Also, we recognize associations' historical role in getting things started in Wisconsin, whether it was the first trainings in the 80s to WIMGA petitioning extension for the creation of the coordinator position in the late 90s. For that, we're all thankful. Historically, that's a pretty significant contribution that for folks who maybe haven't been around that long, don't recognize. So that needs to be acknowledged. We also know associations play a very important role in building local camaraderie and support in supporting community activities. We also feel with the changes, associations now have more opportunities. Here we want to answer what pertains to extension and leave the direct association questions to be answered by WIMGA. So, all right, so I got a question here, Mike. What will be the relationship between associations and extension?
Good question. It's been one that has been evolving over time, and it's always actually been kind of difficult to answer, even historically. We can look back and just say the relationship between associations and extension has at best been ill-defined. And when you looked from county to county, you see it was defined differently. Now, prior to the pandemic, we worked to have associations recognized in a way similar to 4-H. To 4-H clubs and that with MOUs and requiring associations to follow all campus policy and procedures. This effort stalled due to the pandemic, which I'm thankful for because it gave us time to rethink this route. So going forward, the university recognizes associations as separate entities. MOUs are no longer required, and this gives associations the freedoms and flexibilities to operate independent of universities' policies. This includes association finances, purchases, contracts, and association membership.
We have questions on projects and associations. You ready for these ones, Mike?
Let's do it.
All right. So do associations need to coordinate projects?
Right. So in the previous model, project approval was an extension requirement and a way to communicate volunteer opportunities to members. To varying degrees, associations assume the administrative aspects of this, much of the leadership, maybe financial support, and sometimes coordination of many of the projects that were approved and to do in their counties. So in the new model, community service is going to be conducted through other organizations. Guidance as to what's is allowed is going to be outlined in the Master Gardener program purpose and scope. But it boils down to is extension will no longer require project approval as before because of the guidance from the other organization, and we're going to scope out what's allowable. Master Gardeners record their time in the online reporting system by the organization and activity, not by project. So again, in the future, in the upcoming year, rather than logging into ORS and finding your favorite project and entering it, we're going to redo the online reporting system to have a list of all the organizations that are available to volunteer for, and we will get your volunteer. You will record based on the organization. There'll be more details there to help you out, but we actually think this is going to be a big improvement on what we've been trying to do from the past.
Yeah, I've seen some of the plans, and it looks like it's going to definitely streamline and hopefully should make things a little less frustrating, perhaps, for Master Gardeners.
Yeah, but it still needs to be a system that tells a story. So I think we've
Right.
hit that happy medium,
Yep.
having efficiency in reporting hours, but getting enough detail to talk about what Master Gardeners do.
Right. Yeah, it's critical for extension to be telling the story of the impact we make in the state. So that's really good. So I got another question here, and this may not apply to all counties, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Are project leads necessary?
Yeah, project leads, chairs, there's been a lot of different terminology here used. Some, but not all associations have operated with a project lead or a similar position to coordinate projects. This was never an extension requirement or an extension structure that we tried to put in place, but it was something some associations found as an effective management tool. Going forward, it continues to not be a requirement from us, and we actually largely see it being a moot point. as we move to this organization-based model for community service. They might have a lead locally, but the requirement for associations to do this is not going to be in place from us.
Another one here, it's kind of related. Can master gardeners be required to complete hours on certain projects?
Yeah, so there's a number of groups out there who have put requirements of a certain number of hours to be completed on designated projects by members. This was a local requirement by either staff or the association. This was never a statewide extension requirement. And going into the future, this will continue not to be a statewide extension master gardener requirement. All we're going to do is collect people, or not collect people, collect hours from people submitting for their continuing ed and volunteer levels, and have that applied to the different status, like for certification. So, but yeah, and we're not going to enforce the requirements that are put in locally if they continue to be. So,
okay. Can associations still fund projects?
Yep. So some associations have chose to fund volunteer projects. This was not a requirement from us. So going forward, funding of activities will continue to not be a requirement of the Master Gardener program. Actually, in the new model, we no longer operate through approved projects, and we actually really hope that with the community service being conducted through other organizations, that they'll step up and financially support the volunteer activities benefiting them. So also keep in mind that as associations are separate from the university, associations are free to raise and spend money as they choose.
There are also some questions about association membership. And so I'm just going to jump in here with some of those related questions. So do you have to be a member in an association to be a master gardener?
Yep. So previously, membership in an association was not a program requirement. Going forward, you do not need to be a member in an association to be a Wisconsin Master Gardener.
Okay. Is there an annual dues requirement?
Yeah, get asked this one a lot. Dues are an association and WMGA requirement. The Extension Master Gardener program did not require dues.
So that was never part of the program.
Was never part of our program. No. And going forward, the Extension Master Gardener program continues to not collect dues.
Okay. Do associations still need to limit membership to vetted extension volunteers?
Right. And by vetted, that means the criminal background check, the mandated reporter training, and all the mandates had to be completed.
So in the old way, I'm sorry. So in the old way, it'd be like the certified or active master gardener. That's kind of what they're getting at.
We had it all lumped together like that, but we're making a clear distinction now. So by vetted, it meant people who had completed the criminal background check and the other mandates. And that was part of our risk management process. Was we asked that association membership be limited only to vetted extension volunteers, people who completed those things. Going forward, we no longer request membership to be limited to extension volunteers. That CBC and all that is going to be handled differently. So we do not need to require it for association membership.
Right. Well, right. And it's an association. It's a third party.
Yeah, they're separate.
Right?
And
so it's a third party.
All right.
That's not an extension thing. Okay. With these changes, we read a few questions. We've definitely come across this theme in a few places. Why become a master gardener?
Right. And this is a question that has always been on my mind. Why do people want to become a master gardener? And we know from talking to people that people become a master gardener for the personal enrichment. They want to learn from our programs and from each other. There's an affiliation with that title of being a master gardener. There's social connections from being with like-minded individuals, and there's that ability for them to give back in the community in some sort of structured way. So that's what people have traditionally come to the program for. Going forward, we feel this continues that trend. In the future, this will continue, and in some cases expand upon these opportunities. There will be more opportunities to volunteer where people want to. They'll be able to choose and have the freedom to volunteer where they want. And there will be the opportunity for associations to expand their memberships beyond just the vetted volunteer if they want. Individuals remain connected to Extension through their credentialing by the Master Gardener program and by participating in the Extension, Extension continuing education events. So there's still all these things that have drawn people to the program. They'll still be in place. And I actually think they'll be enhanced because we don't have to do some things we once had to. We get more freedom. We get that flexibility. We're having clear defined roles and responsibilities. I think it'll be better for everyone.
Thank you, Mike. So much, Mike. We know that change is hard. We know that change, with any change process, there will be pros and cons. And, ultimately, we're working to strengthen the program, the Master Gardener program, the Extension Horticulture program. And as we're doing that, we're really working hard to minimize the cons and maximize the pros of this particular change process. We're sure you have more questions, and we'll be working to address them as we move forward. We're sure this video probably, we hope, if we did our job, answered a lot of your questions, but it may have prompted new questions for you. So we're encouraging you to continue to use that online comment box. The link will be below this video in YouTube here. Just look below there and it should be easy to find. Plug in those questions and we'll continue to address those questions that you may have. Also, what you can expect from us is you will get more information on updates as we move forward. Also, you can expect to see those types of things either in the Vibe or maybe in emails that are outside of the regular Vibe schedule, depending on how we move down this process. Also, you will be getting requests for more information and prompts for response from us. So we may be asking more questions from you as a Master Gardener. So please, when you see those emails, please, thoughtfully respond to them, because that we find very useful and very helpful as we are working on this change process. We're working on the details, we have available to share with you as they become available. So we couldn't answer every single question today because there's still things being worked out. And so we hope to answer all those questions. That's the goal as we get these things worked out, as we move into this new model. And we also recognize that counties and different Master Gardeners individually in groups are at different status, so to speak. You're at different levels and each county has things a little differently. And as we've often said in Extension, there are 72 different ways to do various things. So we recognize that some of these questions, the goal was to answer those universal questions, but also knowing that there are unique situations that may only apply to your county or apply to your situation. So it's a tricky process we're working through, and we ask for your patience and trust that we will get your questions answered. Just also as a note, when these changes are fully worked out, the plan is that they will take effect January 1st, 2022. So that only gives us 2 months. But we also know that even though the changes officially take effect January 1st, we're going to use, January 1st, 2022, I should say, we'll be using 2022 to realize them and make those changes take effect. So thank you for watching this video and stay tuned for more.
Thank you, everyone.